Hey guys, my name's Caitlin. Welcome back to my channel. As you can tell by the title, today I'm talking you guys through all of the books that I read in the month of October. We are talking about 16 books in this video, which sounds like a lot, but considering how many books I've been reading while we've been in lockdown, 16 is actually a bit of a slow reading month for me. I think it's mainly because I had so many new releases that I was looking forward to at the end of this month that when we hit like the middle of October, I was just not in the mood to read anything except those new books that were coming out at the end. But anyway, let's get into the books that I read this month. I'm going to keep the same format for this video that I did for my September wrap-up, which is talking you through the books that I read in order of rating. So we're starting with all of my 5-star reads and then working our way down. I honestly don't think I have many books below a 4-star rating this month. I had such a good reading month. First up, we have a trilogy. I have mentioned these books in my past few videos, and that is the Dare to Try trilogy by Ella Frank and Brooke Blaine. So this is a bit of a crossover between Ella Frank's Chicagoverse and Brooke Blaine's South Haven series. Book 1 is Dare You, Book 2 is Dare Me, and then Book 3 is Truth or Dare. Kieran Bailey is a firefighter in Chicago, and the book begins with him and his team getting called to a hotel fire on one of the top floors. When he gets there, he finds a beautiful woman in a stunning dress who is a bit too shocked to be of much assistance, so he throws her over his shoulder and gets her out of there. It isn't until she's gone and his mates are ribbing him that he realizes she is actually a he, and he just played Prince Charming to another man. Both of these characters are intrigued by and drawn to one another and are constantly finding reasons to be in one another's company. I gave each of the books in this trilogy 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I do not think Ella Frank and Brooke Blaine could ever do us wrong. I have loved every book that they have published, both together and individually. Bash and Kieran had such an unexpected but powerful and beautiful romance that I absolutely loved reading about, and this trilogy was just so addicting. I could not put it down. I'm sad it's over. The next book I read in October is Puck Drills and Quick Thrills by Eden Finley and Saxon James. This is book 5 and the final book in their CU hockey series. Wesley is a former NHL star who had to quit the team when his parents passed away, and he was named legal guardian of his 5 younger siblings. For now, he coaches CU's hockey team, but when one of their star players is failing math, it leads to a head-to-head with math professor Jasper Eckstein. After their confrontation, Jasper finds himself giving extra credit to a hockey player, which he swore he would never do, and Wesley finds himself agreeing to be Jasper's date to his 20-year high school reunion, and neither of them have any idea how it happened and how they agreed to those terms. I gave this book 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I'm so sad that this series is over, but I'm also so happy because I loved it so much and now we can just go back and binge the whole thing. But can I just say, as if these authors smashed out a 5-book series in 1 year while also writing their own individual books as well. How? I am confused. This was such a good conclusion to the CU hockey series. We got to see a beautiful relationship forming between West and Jasper, but we also got to see all of the other loose ends throughout the series being tied together perfectly, and that epilogue. Oh my word. The dynamic between Wesley and Jasper was perfect. I loved their banter, I loved their connection, and I loved the way that they were able to be vulnerable with one another. Before I get on to the next book that I read in October, we're actually moving on to the books that I talked about in my October TBR, and I just want to point out, I actually stuck to my TBR this month. I had 6 books on that list that I wanted to read, and I read all 6 of them. I'm so proud of myself. So moving on with that, the next book that I read in October was Learning to Feel by N.R. Walker. Nathan is a very busy man working at Mass General Hospital in Boston, and he's kind of resigned to living a loveless and sexless life, but he's still feeling as though something is constantly missing. He makes a spur-of-the-moment decision to leave his entire life behind in order to become a small-town doctor in Belfast, Maine. The job comes with a house, and the house comes with Trent and his dog, Bentley. Trent is a painter who's living in the hospital-owned house for free while he's fixing it all up for Nathan. Nathan is immediately drawn to Trent, but is really confused as to these newfound and instant feelings of attraction for another man. At the end of the day, he decides to just ignore any of his brain's protests and just let himself feel. Again, this was another 5-star read. I absolutely loved this book, which shouldn't have surprised me because I have loved every other N.R. Walker book that I've read so far, so I don't know why I thought this might be any different. The connection between Nathan and Trent was so beautiful. It was established from pretty much the second that they locked eyes, even if they themselves didn't know, you know, how deep it was or how much it was going to mean to them. They are such beautiful main characters. They're such nice people that I just wanted to go into this book and give them both a hug. I loved the romance. I loved the drama. I loved the makeup scene. It was such a good makeup scene, and the way that they called each other baby. My heart went out the window. Next, we have Lord of Eternal Night by Ben Alderson. Jack's life has only one meaning: to break the curse or die trying. He is the witch's prophesized savior, born with a power that they haven't seen in over a century. He needs to kill the creature, break the curse, and restore power to his coven. But the creature isn't the haunting beast that he's been brought up to hate. Tensions rise between Jack and Marius as half-truths are uncovered and conflicting emotions are brewing just beneath the surface. Again, this is another 5-star read. This book had been on my radar for such a long time, especially seeing as that I follow Ben on Instagram, so I was keeping up to date on everything about this book, and then never read it when it came out, and I have no idea why, but I'm so happy that I read it because I absolutely loved it. This book was so addicting. I definitely could have read it in one sitting if I had started it earlier in the day, but I happened to start it at 10 p.m. and I need sleep. I really loved Ben's writing throughout this book though, and it's got me so excited for his other releases that are coming out next year. Next is Hostile Takeover by Lucy Lennox. Back in college, Ellison was given a dare that whoever was the next employee to walk through the doors of their country club was his target to take into the back room, have his way with them, and then bring back a souvenir. Who else would walk in other than Gray Blackwood, who is the guy that our character has had a bit of a subtle crush on, but things get out of hand and then they go very wrong. Fast forward to the present day, Gray Blackwood has clawed himself to the top of the Wall Street food chain, and he is dismantling the companies of every single frat boy who did him wrong one by one. When he gets to Ellison's family business and starts making demands, Ellison doesn't see Gray as the enemy, but rather the guy that he's wanted a second chance with since college. This is another 5-star read. As soon as I read the excerpt of this book in Lucy's email, I knew that I was absolutely going to love it, and I was right. I loved that little snippet from their college days and how we could compare that to their characters toward the end of the novel and, you know, see how they developed over time, but I also loved seeing how their perspectives of each other changed throughout the novel as well. They both made assumptions about each other, and I was living for it when they were both proved wrong. This book is a little bit of a slow burn, but the romance is 100% worth it. Next is Moonstruck by Onley James, and this is book 3 in the Necessary Evil series. Atticus and Jericho met in a very unique situation, arguing, which turned into flirting over who got to kill their shared enemy. Their accidental meeting turned into an explosive hookup that neither of them expected, nor can they get it out of their minds. They have nothing in common and they don't run in the same circles, but they're instantly drawn to one another and can't seem to stay away. When something from Jericho's past resurfaces that Atticus is drawn into, they need to find a way to fight together to take out a common enemy while also trying to navigate this new bond between them. Is it any surprise that I gave this book 5 stars? No, I don't think so. I have loved the previous 2 books in this series. I definitely knew that I was going to love this one as well, and I can't wait for the rest of them to come out because I think the 5s are just going to keep on coming. I saw a few reviews where people said that they didn't really like Atticus's character until they read this book, and I have to say I kind of agree with them. It's not really that I didn't like his character per se, but more that I thought he could be a little bit of a spoilsport, which makes sense as the oldest brother. But I have to say, now that I have read this book, Atticus is a darling, and I will hurt anyone who says otherwise. I loved seeing Atticus come to grips with the intensity of his passion towards Jericho, especially considering how little emotion he felt before meeting him. Alright, we are on to my last 5-star reads, which are the Noah and Cole thrillers by Tal Bauer, book 1 being The Murder Between Us, and then book 2 is The Grave Between Us. Both of these books follow Noah and Cole, who are FBI agents trying to solve some serial killer murders. Book 1 sees Noah and Cole meeting in Las Vegas, having an instant connection and spending an explosive night together before Noah gets called away for work and not telling Cole about it, leaving Cole thinking that he doesn't feel the same way that he did. That is until Cole shows up in Iowa as the profiler Noah requested to help track down a local serial killer. In book 2, we focus more on Cole's history as a profiler and how the serial killer that he was tasked with interrogating 8 years ago is now active again and hunting Noah. I gave both of these books 5 stars. I am definitely not a fan of the thriller genre, but I loved Tal Bauer's writing in The Jock, and I really just wanted to see why people enjoyed these books so much, and I can definitely understand it. Both of these books were so addicting. I devoured them in about a day each. I couldn't put them down. I think I liked book 1 more overall because it focused a bit more heavily on the romance aspect, so you got to see Noah and Cole trying to navigate this bond with each other while also trying to solve this murder mystery. In book 2, the romance definitely took a backseat while we focused more on Noah's past and how exactly this serial killer has come to hunt Noah. I understand that it's a thriller, so majority of my feelings are coming from not my dislike of the genre, but my aversion to it. Some of the things that were detailed in this book about the murders were just absolutely disgusting to read. I found it really difficult to follow along with, and I just spent most of the book being incredibly anxious about our main characters, thinking that one of them was going to get hurt or that what the killer did was going to happen to one of our main characters. I absolutely love Noah and Cole's relationship. It's probably one of my favorites that I've read this year, but thriller just really isn't my genre. Moving on now to all of my 4-star reads, we are starting with Head Above Water by C.E. Ritchie. Easton and Canon are stepbrothers, but Canon never wanted anything to do with his new family, especially Easton. Meanwhile, Canon has always been the one thing that Easton wanted, but was never able to have. He's straight, he's engaged, and supposedly leading a perfect life on the complete opposite side of the country. When a major loss brings Canon back home, their grief pushes them together closer than they've ever been before. Canon has become Easton's anchor in this time of heartache, but Easton needs to remember to keep his head above water when Canon eventually returns to his normal life. I gave this book 4.75 stars. We're getting into the decimals here. I really wanted to give this book a 5-star rating, but there was just something that wasn't quite pushing it over the edge for me. I expected this book to break me considering it focuses so heavily on loss and grief, but C.E. Ritchie's writing really made it possible to read alongside Canon and Easton's grief without actually being sucked into it and feeling too much of it ourselves as readers. I really liked how this book was set up, and I also loved just seeing the moments of lightness and innocence in between their bouts of grief. With the heaviness of the topic, it was kind of easy sometimes to forget that these characters are in their early to mid-20s. They're still very young, and so it was so good to actually see them being able to act their age and just have fun in the midst of all this loss. Next, I read Heist of the Heart by Leighton Green, which is a novella in the Morelli family series. Hudson absolutely loathes Gio Carlucci, but the mobster might be his only chance to survive New Year's Eve. The Morelli family-owned Kesmet nightclub has just closed for the night, but before dawn there will be a theft, a murder, and a betrayal, and someone is setting up Hudson to take the fall for all 3. If Hudson and Gio can't figure out who's truly behind the crimes before Luca, the Morelli family boss, arrives, it could be the end of the line for both of them. I gave this novella 4 stars. I honestly don't know why I didn't read it when I was binging the rest of the Morelli family series, but I'm happy that I came back to it either way. This is a free novella that you can get by signing up to Leighton Green's email, but it was still about 200 pages, which is a pretty good length, and I loved seeing all the characters again. I loved seeing Luca and Finch, and I loved seeing the characters who didn't have their happily ever after just yet in the novella, but who have it in the current books. I was reading it just looking at these characters going, your time is coming. Your happily ever after is coming very soon. I did think the murder mystery aspect was a little bit predictable, but I didn't care too much because I was mainly just in it for the romance. I also liked how since it's set over one night, you don't actually get to see the build-up of their romance, you just see the climax of it as it all happens. Moving on to my 3-star reads, and we are starting with Sweetest Hate by Balin Crow, which is book 2 in the Guys Next Door series. Kellen and Arson have a little bit of a problem. So since they met, they've both loathed each other and been drawn to each other equally, and it's driving them nuts. Arson just so happens to be the stepbrother of Kellen's best friend, so when there's a little bit of a mishap on the trip to their lake house, Kellen and Arson end up having to share a room. As they're forced to spend time together, Kellen comes to realize that there's more to Arson than just his asshole exterior, and it has him questioning everything that he thought he knew about love. I gave this book 3.75 stars. I was so happy that we finally got a book 2 in this series. I absolutely loved Stripped Love when I read it for the first time last year, and I I actually think I've reread it 2 or 3 times since then. I really enjoyed the animosity between Kellen and Arson. It really ramped up the tension between them, and it just made it all the better when they were forced to be near each other even when they really didn't like each other. Arson is an absolute sweetheart, and I do wish we'd gotten to see a little bit more character development on his side, especially since the blurb kind of alludes to Kellen, you know, finding out a little bit more about Arson and exposing this soft, sweet side of him, when I feel like we didn't really get that in the book. It felt more like just a shift between enemies to lovers with no real transition. It just kind of happened. Next we have Forgotten Luca by Sloane Kennedy, which is the first book in her The Four series. Luca lives in the darker side of the world, one where he and his brothers rescue kidnapped children from their captors and give them a second chance at life. 8 years ago, Luca found 14-year-old Billy, who'd been taken from his parents 3 years prior and was on the verge of giving up. Billy wasn't even his real name, but one that his captors had given him. Luca had to leave him behind in order to save someone else, promising that he would come back for Billy, but he never did. When they cross paths in present day, Luca doesn't actually recognize Billy at first, whose real name is Remy, but Remy immediately recognizes Luca and wants absolutely nothing to do with the guy who forgot about him or who is dredging up all of these horrible memories from his past. But Luca is not the type of guy to give up so easily. I gave this book 3.5 stars. It definitely hits you in all of the feels, but I would recommend reading the trigger warnings before delving into this book because it's not exactly an easy read. Even just the implications of what Remy went through were very hard to keep reading through. So I'm very thankful that Sloane only wrote in present tense and you don't actually have to read about any of that in real time. I enjoyed seeing how Luca and Remy coped with different situations and seeing how they came to be there for one another and came to lean on one another as well. Luca was a little bit of an anomaly throughout about half of this book. We were constantly trying to put together the puzzle that was his character, and I was so intrigued to find out more about him. I also loved reading about him from Remy's perspective and seeing how his view and his opinion of him changed constantly as the book progressed. I would definitely recommend reading Sloane's Protectors series before you delve into this one. I didn't, and it does say in the beginning that you don't have to, but it's a recommended if you want the full experience. I did feel rather lost at times with all of the characters that were coming in and all of these like relationships and the bonds and how people are connected, and I was just so confused that I do kind of wish I'd read that series first before delving into this one. Next is a duology, and that is the Caged Duet by Amy Thorne. Isaac was discharged from the army after he was injured in an explosion, and he's looking for the same kind of loyalty and brotherhood that he had with his squad, and then his brother suggests that he prospect with the Black Death Riders motorcycle club. There he meets Thanatos, the president, who has been on a path of self-destruction ever since his sister was killed. Than has never really considered the consequences of his actions until his unexpected feelings for Isaac shows him that he actually has something to lose. I gave both of these books 3 stars. The duet was very gripping and I constantly wanted to just flick to the end to see what was going to happen. Definitely read the trigger warnings before delving into this book. I didn't, and I regretted it. There are some things in this book that are very difficult to get through. If I had read the trigger warnings, I don't actually think I would have read this duet. Other than that, I feel like the relationship between our main characters felt rather rushed at some points. I loved that they had an instant connection with one another, but it felt like it went from lust to love way too quickly. Alrighty, those are all of the books that I read in the month of October. I honestly thought I had a few more to get through, and that's it. I'm kind of surprised. Please let me know down in the comments if you have read any of these books and what your thoughts are on them, or if they're on your TBR and you're still looking to pick them up. Also, be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and hit that subscribe button down below if you'd like to see similar content. Like I said in the beginning, my name is Caitlin, and I will see you guys in another video next week.